So there's Ryan Poles pulling off the best deal of his short tenure with the Chicago Bears, a deal that landed a first-round pick in 2024, and of course the headliner, DJ Moore. So he's excited, and he texts his quarterback, Justin Fields. And you text Justin Fields, and you're like, hey, we just got DJ Moore. You expect that tweet to be returned. You expect to see the little dots show up immediately. Instead, what Ryan Poles got, according to him at the NFL owners meeting, a lot of silence for quite some time, a couple of hours worth. And he's just sitting there like, where's Justin? Are you sleeping? And apparently Justin Fields was sleeping. Sleeping through the trade of the century, the trade of the year. Kind of like when I took my daughter to go see Hamilton and she fell asleep during the second part of it. It just happens. Sometimes you have to sleep through some of the greatest things. Hopefully you will not be sleeping through this show. We've got a great one lined up for you. So Sammy, why don't we go ahead and get started?
Turn up your volume. Because you're about to listen to The Sick Podcast with Adam Ray.
Trying to cut it back. Justin Fields making magic happen. There goes Fields. Touchdown.
The sickest Chicago Bears and fantasy football podcast.
Hey, what's up, everybody? It's Tuesday night. You know what that means. It is time for Take It to the Rank Big Show here for you this evening. Of course, eventually, in just a matter of moments, we'll be joined by our co-host, Carmen Vitali of FoxSports.com. But did want to go ahead and just dive into everything that has been happening with the Chicago Bears over the last couple of days. Now, obviously, there haven't been a lot of moves been going on, but what we did get was a little bit of insight as to what has been happening with the Chicago Bears over the last couple of weeks, kind of getting a little bit of getting some thoughts from Ryan Poles and, of course, head coach Matt Eberflus as the NFL owners meeting, commenced. I don't know if that's the right word, but they met in Arizona this week. And we got a lot of insight into what happened before and after the DJ Moore trade and what the Bears are going to be doing in the future. So why don't we break that down right now with our co-host, Carmen Vitale of FoxSports.com, who joins us right now. Carmen, how are you? Listen, I'm talking about this story, this anecdote that they were talking about. Ryan Poles was talking about texting Justin Fields after the DJ Moore trade. But first of all, I know a lot of people go back. Most people are on texting terms. Nobody calls. I feel like that's worth a call. I feel like that's hey, get on the phone and call Justin Fields. I don't know if that's text. I think that warrants a phone call. Do you agree?
I don't know, just because I don't think, at least I live my life on Do Not Disturb. So right. You're probably not going to get through to me on a phone call. I check my text messages regularly, way more often than I check my missed calls, which is a character flaw of mine. Don't get me wrong. But maybe Justin is kind of the same way. And doesn't he technically belong to Gen Z? Do they pick up the phone ever? I don't know.
Probably
a text message gets it across, right? Hey, dude, we got DJ Moore.
Yeah, I will tell you this. One of my friends, two of my friends, like when we used to go to the when I would go to the Super Bowl, I would usually get to bring a couple of guests. And one of my best friends, I only called once a year, and it was to tell him that he was going to go to the Super Bowl with me. I feel like those are special occasions where you could do this. But let me ask you this though. What is the best sport? Because like waking up to that sports news, do you have an instance in your mind of like the best sports news you've ever woken up to?
If I recall correctly, Adam Schefter broke that Tom Brady was coming to the Buccaneers very early in the morning.
Right.
And I had suspicions prior to that. But to hear it officially being reported by Schefter, and I was on Eastern time too. So I'm as far east as you're going to get in the country. And I still think if memory serves, it happened at like 6 a.m. He came out with it. So by the time I woke up, that just reminded me actually too. I was taking a nap when Tom Brady retired first.
No.
I just remembered that. I was at the Senior Bowl I was at the Senior Bowl. Those are very long days. There are very long nights. And I was taking a nap, and I was like, and then I woke. Oh no, I don't know if it was a nap. I think it was, and I woke up to that too. That was bad sports news, though. I was so in the Bucks at that point.
Yeah, that's a bad one. That I was actually
just interrupting my sleep all the time.
all the time. I was just gonna say I was on the air when he returned to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers last year. That was being broken by Ian Rappaport on the NFL Network. And so we were on the air. We reacted to that, which was fine because the rundown that day really sucked. So it actually saved us. I know a lot of people complain like, oh, blow up the rundown. You're like, that. I saw the rundown. It was terrible. I'm glad that we were able to go on and talk about Tom Brady. I will. You know, it's funny. Being on the West Coast is I legitimately, maybe the Tom Brady one that you bring up now, I think I woke up to that. Typically, I'm either up late enough to where I hear about things because there's been a couple of things that have happened over the last couple of weeks where you're like, oh, the East Coast is going to freak out when they wake up to this in the morning, where I've been a part of. But I also remember Mike Trout was announced. His extension with the Los Angeles Angels was also announced very early on the West Coast. That was, but I was up. I was in the NFL.com newsroom when that happened. Also, I was on doing this show, a different version of the Adam Rank podcast, when Shohei Ohtani signed with the Angels. So that actually happened mid-show, and it went from it was a fantasy podcast back then, and it went into a Shohei Ohtani podcast. As the years fly.
The West Coast really gets shafted when it comes to, I mean, so many things timing-wise, because the country, I feel like, runs on Eastern time, even Central time. I am a firm believer Central time's the best. But being on the West Coast, you're just behind everything, unless, like you said, you stay up late enough to 3 o'clock in the morning where it's 6 a.m. East Coast time, and that's when stuff is starting to happen. But yeah, I mean, whenever I'm out in LA, I always feel like I'm so far behind, and I just wake up so much. I'm like scrolling all of my alerts on Twitter.
Oh yeah. And you think about the baseball writers who traditionally are up so late, wake up around 11 a.m. West Coast time, and it's like 2 p.m. Like the workday is almost over on the East Coast. But things like Kobe's 81, things like that, we get to see it live.
That's true.
The national championship games kick off at 5 o'clock. Like it's not like you miss a lot of stuff going to bed early.
Right. No, I love that too then. And then you wake up and football's already on the weekends, 9 a.m. for college, 10 a.m. for NFL. It's fantastic. I love that. Not that I'm waking up necessarily at those times. I remember actually when I worked for the Dodgers way back when, and we would be playing a team on the East Coast, our coaches needed clip packets. And if you know what those are, I was a PR intern and I had to gather all of the news from that morning, and so the coaches could review it before right first thing, and our coach at the time really wanted to have that right first thing. So I remember having to get up, or rather stay up at 3:30, 4 o'clock in the morning, and just put together this clip pack whenever the Dodgers were on the East Coast.
Oh my God.
And the amount of times I did that after coming home from a bar, I don't know if I'm proud or ashamed.
Oh, geez. Who was the manager? Bill Russell?
No, it was Don Mattingly.
Mattingly, that's right. I was trying to think. I was like, who is the guy? Who bridged the gap between Russell and Dave Roberts? And there it is. But going back to the Chicago Bears, the NFL owners, they had their meetings in Arizona. People are like, what are you talking about, Rank? Whatever. I was at war with Bears Twitter this weekend because it was Lakers Bulls. And then you have to revisit the story. Why do you not? I'm like, we're not going. I'm going to have I swear to you, I'm going to pin it to the top. Explain my life to you. And there's somebody, by the way, there's somebody on Twitter spreading misinformation, being like that I never lived in Chicago, which I guess if you're doing the suburban thing, the suburbs, okay. Park Ridge, Hoffman Estates, Schaumburg, not Chicago. I get that. But as far my parents would be very shocked to know that I never lived in the greater Chicagoland area. They'd be really weird about it. And if that's the criteria you're going by, I've never lived in Anaheim. So I could never claim the Angels. I've never lived in Los Angeles. I could not claim the Lakers.
Any of these teams.
No, nobody. So
the fact that is that it's the greater Chicagoland area that I feel like that's the test is like, all right, did you grow up in this area whatsoever? If you know it's called Chicagoland, that's it. That's as simple as that. You grew up in Chicagoland. Everybody's a Bear fan.
Spent my summers there, like all that stuff. You're fine. I don't need to go into that, but I do want to talk about the NFL owners meetings in Arizona. Not a lot of big news happened. But I take that back. There was some big news. Do we have the photo, Sam? Do we have the photo of Matt Eberflus? Do we have the one that I'm thinking of? What is happening? What is with the flow?
Listen, I was just as shocked as everybody else. Matt, whenever he's around us, he like every press conference I've been to, he's wearing a hat. And I'm like, bro, if I had that hair, I would never wear a hat in my life. The lettuce is it's just flowing, and he's just like he's sitting there, and like his wife was out there with him, and now this is all starting to make sense. I was like, okay, all right, he looks on point because his wife is with him, and no, it was I was shocked. I was like going through the coaches too, looking for. I mean, I cover the NFC North, so I'm trying to pinpoint all of the NFC North coaches, and I missed him. I was like, I glazed right over him at first, and then I like doubled back, and I was like, oh my god, that's Matt Eberflus.
Yeah, he's the 50-year-old guy who hangs out with young guys like KOC, LaFleur, and Campbell.
How old is Dan Campbell? I don't even know how old Dan Campbell is.
He's got to be the same age, but like
he's got to be the same age.
But he fits in. It's not like he's like Ron Rivera or Mike McCarthy, where you're like, you don't fit in. Like Eberflus is the guy's like, are you not like? When Eberflus, how old is he? Like 52 or something like that, where he would be like, you're 52? Like that would be, or whatever it is. Yeah. Like, oh, he seems a lot younger. He's got a little bit of a flow. I will say this, though. I don't trust coaches that don't wear hats. I know that Belichick doesn't. Ditka didn't. Fair. It bothers me. Put on a ball cap. This is what, although, you know, what's funny is as I was out there coaching my my daughter's soccer team, the Huntington Beach Coyotes, I was not wearing a hat at all. I went out there bald. I almost did the Nagy, went visor
with visor,
bald visor guy, but couldn't quite. I don't know. I'm not gonna pull that off. But on real news,
that was the galvanizing news that came out.
That's the biggest news. That's all we have to talk about. Everything that happened with the NFL's NFL owners meetings. Yeah. By the way, but I will say this. I got to stop saying that. GM Ryan Poles said, and we got a lot of sound bites, which was amazing. And he said, on paper right now, we're better than we were before, but we understand that we've got a long way to go. How much better are the Bears right now than even a year ago at this point?
So much better. I mean, listen, they now have legitimate targets for Justin Fields. They have some organization even on defense. They bolstered that linebacking core. And they have a plan, and we're actually getting to see it. I mean, I think last year, Ryan Poles comes in, bright-eyed, bushy-tailed. We have no idea how he's going to fare, essentially, with limited draft capital as a first-year GM. And he flips all that around, and you're like, okay, can I get on board this? I don't know. But now you can see he's proved it already with moves like the Roquan Smith move. He's two steps ahead. And now you can trust him. And this roster it just seems like he knows what he's doing. He knows what the plan is. And now he has all these resources left and still prioritizes resources for next year. So that further reinforces that there's a plan. And I really appreciate that. And I think that he's earned the trust of Bears fans so far, now armed with all these resources that he apparently knows what to do with.
Yeah, that's one of my least favorite things on Twitter. When people ask, what has he done to earn your trust? I'm like, I don't have time for this. I'm not going to sit here and I'm not going to do the research for you. You can see what he's done. It's a remarkably different team, a different tenor, and one that's starting to shape up in the vision of what Ryan Poles has in mind. The thing, of course, that scares me, because I'm always the cockeyed optimist, when he says a long way to go, realistic. I know that we differ on this. How far away are we?
2 years. And that's what I've been saying pretty much all along. I think that my timeline hasn't changed. And I don't think that timeline has changed when it comes to Ryan Poles. I talked about how much he put an emphasis on getting draft capital for next year as well. He is treating this like a multi-year process. It's always a multi-year process as far as I'm concerned. But you're not going to be able to plug all of the holes with the guys that you want in one off season. And he's said that verbatim. It's not all going to happen in one off season. So you need another off season now with the resources and to keep kind of going along this plan that he has set in motion for a couple of years. So I think next year, again, we're looking at a 500 season, winning season, maybe even flirting with the wild card, but I don't know, because I think this division is going to be really tough. But come 2024, I fully expect these guys to be in the postseason. Fully.
When you talk about the multi-year process, this just has me thinking, obviously when they traded up for Justin Fields, the Giants moved down from 11 to 20. They picked up an additional first round pick, which is the reason why the Bears didn't have a first round pick last year. Could you see that? I know that the quarterback from Tennessee is now starting to get a lot of buzz too. Could you see the Bears doing something similar right there at number 9, perhaps saying, unless Jalen Carter's there, which we talked about last week. But if you're sitting there and you look at it and you're like, now let's just pick up, if somebody came up and we're like, yeah, we actually need this pick, we'll give you a first round next season. Do you believe that Ryan Poles would hesitate to make that move?
No. And that's the thing, is I think that there are still situations, just because they traded out of the number 1 spot, and I think we can get to this whenever, but just because they traded out of the number 1 spot doesn't preclude them from making another trade if the opportunity presents itself. You still have a top 10 pick. That is extremely valuable. We're getting caught up because the Bears were already spoiled, I guess, with the number 1 positioning. But just because you don't have the number 1 pick, trades happen all up and down the first round. They happen all up and down the second round, third round, fourth round, all throughout the draft. That is very significant, very valuable capital that the Bears still have. And yeah, if someone wants to come up and get Hendon Hooker, sure. Let's move down a few more spots. And again, unless someone on their board has fallen that they really like, I think that he really is going to take the best available player, the best value. And that value, I think, also includes if there's another trade scenario, perhaps.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we saw a lot of that. That was something that Poles also mentioned, was the value to the player and trying to get the most of the money, not just wildly spending money when you have an opportunity. He did also mention that the Bears received a lot of good offers for the number 1 overall pick, but the Panthers were motivated. Now, being realistic, do you think the Bears made the best possible move at the best possible time?
Yes, I do, because there were clearly more than one offer. There was more than one offer.
That's what it
the
sounded
Bears
like.
Knew that. The Panthers knew that. If the Panthers know that, then they are going to be as motivated as ever to be the ones to beat out whatever other offers those are to get to that top spot and have the luxury of choice. That's what the Panthers want. They want the luxury to choose which quarterback. And that was so important to them that they gave up a haul. That's the thing too. You look at what the Bears got in this haul. DJ Moore counts as a first round pick to me. A first round 100%. Pick that has already shown what he can do, which is the best of both worlds, right? Then you also still have multiple firsts and multiple seconds over the next couple of years. And again, like we just talked about, this doesn't preclude them from trading down even further because, oh, by the way, they still have a top 10 pick. So I just think that this was perfect timing so that you knew exactly what capital you had going into free agency, and you can start to figure out how the puzzle pieces all fit. Not to mention, you still have a ton of capital and valuable picks going into the draft. You have 4 in the top 62 picks or 65 picks, something like that.
Yeah.
And there's so much flexibility with that. So I just feel that that was the right move for right then, and it doesn't preclude you from making more.
I would agree. I know that a lot of people will say perhaps they should have waited around, maybe hung into the game a little bit more to see if one of these teams really became desperate. But I think that when you get an opportunity to acquire a player like DJ Moore and get the picks that you want. I mean, we don't know how good these teams are going to be next season. of all the teams that you could possibly trade with, I think Indianapolis would have been the most advantageous because, you know, they might end up being the worst of all the teams that were rumored to be in there. But I think you just got to take your deal when you get to 2024, when you get DJ Moore, you're done. You don't need to do it. One thing I did like, and I don't know how you feel about this. He said he didn't try to leverage the Panthers, where he wasn't playing this game where he's got multiple phones. He's like, well, the Panthers will do this. And then what do you do? I kind of like that approach. I don't know if it's like an honest man's game or however you would describe it, but I kind of like the idea of like, you know what? We are working with a partner. You know, if something better came up, and Poles even said this, if something better had come up, we would have told the Panthers like, hey, look, Houston's giving us 2-12, which has not happened. That did not happen. as a for instance, I kind of like the approach that he took. I don't know if am I reading too much into that?
No, this relationship is built on relationships. And if you don't think that it matters that Poles is easy to work with and easy to deal with, then I got news for you.
Yeah.
Because who are you more likely to do a deal with? A guy that you know is going to get what he wants at all costs and try to short you, or a guy who you view in very high moral upstanding character that is fair and, you know, makes these negotiations easy. These negotiations are always so complicated and they are tireless and they go on for a long time. I mean, Poles didn't just wake up one day and was like, oh, we're going to trade the pick with the Panthers. Like, this was weeks, if not months in the making. And if he has that reputation, that's only going to serve him well. It's only going to serve the Bears well if they want to continue to make these moves. And if, again, relationships, reputation, it's everything in this business. And Poles seems to have a really good one. So I like it.
Yeah, that's my conjecture. And again, I don't know what Poles just mentioned that he had multiple offers. We don't know what they were. I feel like the sticking point, and to listen to Frank Reich talk about losing DJ Moore, and they understand the kind of player that they had given up. Mm-hmm. But to me, the negotiation probably came down to DJ Moore, the 2025 first round pick. My conjecture is that some team was willing to do that, to give up 3 first rounders. And that was Poles being like, you know, not being disrespectful, but just saying, look, somebody's going to give us 3 first rounders. Why would I not take somebody else if we don't have to fall as far? You know, let's say if it was the Colts, for instance, you know, that's it. But you go from 1 to 4 as it's instead of 1 to 9, and you get a little bit of a, you know, you can ask for a little bit more. So I think ultimately with the big drop that they had to take, they made the best possible deal. And again, if you didn't listen to the show last week with Matt Harmon, go back and do yourself a favor. Go listen to that, talking about the impact that DJ Moore is going to have on this team. The best possible deal that they could make. Unfortunately, though, as a DJ Moore comes into the fold, we did lose David Montgomery. And Poles expounded on this a little bit, saying that they were really, really close to re-signing David Montgomery. But also, he did say like, hey, both sides had a choice here, kind of throwing it onto David Montgomery. What did you make of that? Did David Montgomery just want to leave? What's going on?
I mean, it's quite possible. And maybe he just saw a dwindling role for himself in this system and thought that, you know, he would be better served being in part of another system where he can take on a better role. And maybe the Lions offered him that. I mean, they did offer him quite a bit of money. Yeah. And they had a need for a more versatile running back. That's essentially what the difference is between Dave Montgomery and Jamal Williams. Jamal Williams was incredibly productive on the ground for the Lions last year, 17 rushing touchdowns, but they need a guy that can also be part of that short game, the short passing game, all that other stuff. And that's not something that Jamal Williams could do or was asked to do very often. Right. And so this is something that he is bringing a whole nother dynamic to the Lions offense now. And I think it probably just came down to scheme fit. And maybe there was there's some changes that are still taking place in this Bears offense where David saw that maybe his role was kind of being, I don't know what it was. I don't know what it was, but it comes down to scheme fit. And coaches are very aware of that, but players are even more acutely aware of that. And I mean, David's been in this league long enough and he knows exactly where he will be utilized best. So we wish him well and Good luck in Detroit. I will still get to cover him, so it's not really just get off my nose. I'm excited.
We're rooting for him 15 games out of the year, and I apologize real quick. I had my rundown up. I did not have the screen up, so I don't know how long CTOD Ghost has been up here. I apologize. I was getting a frantic text from Sammy like, switch screens. I need a better setup here. But here, I do want to read this tweet that he sent in. Hey, Adam. Hey, Carmi. Big CHGO Bears guy here. By the way, Carmen, in addition to her work with Fox Sports, also works for CHGO. It looks like I might be on there tomorrow, Wednesday.
Ooh, fun.
Yeah, so look out. And if
you
not
should come on at some point. Look, that's
if not tomorrow, at some point next week. But by the way, both of you should come on at some point. We will. I know the Bears fans want a right tackle in the first, but I think outside of prioritized Fields, the defensive line should be bolstered. What do you think? I mean, I don't want to speak for Carmen, but I think that we've been pretty vocal in best player available, but you know that Carmi's she's a trench girl. This is your wheelhouse. It doesn't matter which side of the ball, but the trenches have to be addressed, and they will be through the draft.
Yeah, and I think this goes back to what I've said before about the fact that Ryan Poles has the utmost confidence in his evaluation process of offensive linemen, given the fact that he was an offensive lineman and has been a part of a very successful program up until this point in the NFL with the Kansas City Chiefs that has been able to identify really good talent. Not to mention, just last year, he got Braxton Jones. And for all intents and purposes, I know that he took his lumps, but Braxton Jones playing every snap of the season at left tackle is an objective win for Ryan Poles and his evaluation process. So I talked about, actually, I have a piece coming out for Fox Sports, shameless plug, about how I don't necessarily know. My gut is kind of telling me that Ryan Poles isn't going to use the first round pick on the offensive line because of the fact he knows he can hit later on in the draft. That being said, I think the next thing that needs to be
that's what I've been saying
is the defensive line. And that's why Jalen Carter just fits so well. But now with all the off the field stuff, you have to worry about that. And if there's more, and what does that say about his character and his ability to be a teammate and his ability to be a pro, I think is the big thing there also, because you're on your own, man. You're out of your controlled environment of a college. You have to do all of this stuff on your own. You're tasked with, making tons of money and having to work your way through that dynamic as a very young person. I mean, he's 21, 22. And is he equipped to do that is the question for the Bears. But I mean, on the talent level, he is perfect for this Bears team. And that is why this is such a hard decision, I think, for the Chicago Bears. But I absolutely agree that defensive line is something that they still, and they got DeMarcus Walker and they added a little bit, but that interior rotation is so important. And to have a guy that can penetrate from the interior like Jalen Carter can, because he's a defensive tackle that can pass rush, is very important. So I would love to see a guy like Khalid Cansey, but I think number 9 is too rich for him. Something like that. I would love to see him become a Bear, but you definitely still need that 3 tech because the Bears do not have that right now. And they took care of the weak side linebacker and then some. So that is, for me, that's my biggest need with like these premium draft picks, is a guy that can come in right away and be the leader that you need on that front.
And I want to say thank you once again for the generous donation, getting that question asked. Sorry that it took me so long to get to it, but still want to follow up though, along those lines, because I do have it here. Now, Poles said this about his draft prep and his draft evaluation. The further you get away from tape, the workouts and shorts, all that can sway you a little bit too far. I took this to mean that Jalen Carter is a Bear. I really legitimately did, because, people are going to look at the workout and he came in overweight. By the way, Bryce Young wouldn't even step on the scale at his pro day at Alabama, which leads me to believe
probably for the opposite reason.
he doesn't weigh enough. He's growing out his afro, but with both players, you saw enough of them in high leverage situations to know whether they are good football players or not. And I think that and perhaps I'm reading too much into this. Ryan Poles to me was telling me, not, but this was to the general reporters, is that I'm going to favor tape more than anything else. And they're using, and they're using an exhaustive approach of getting to know guys and taking them out to dinner. 30 prospects will be coming to Hallis Hall. They're doing their due diligence. And you have to really ask yourself about Jalen Carter, about the severity of now, not to make light of drag racing or anything like that. But listen, college kids, especially college kids who have cars, listen, I did dumb things. Like we used to do, when I was growing up, we lived in a part of Southern California that was expanding greatly, construction all the time. When you got to the city limits, the outer limits of the city, every dirt road or every street was covered with dirt from all the work trucks. So we would take our cars and do spins and do all sorts of dumb things. I'm not using that as an excuse, but there is an opportunity to grow from that. And I think that without knowing Jalen Carter, the Bears are going to do their due diligence to find out whether he's truly a troubled soul or if this was just a mistake or something like that. So I think there's a huge opportunity. What did you make from that? Or am I just reading too much into it?
I don't know that meant, that Jalen Carter's a Bear, mostly also because I don't know that Jalen Carter is going to make it down to 9, if I'm being quite honest, because I've said this before, the NFL has the uncanny ability to have a little bit of a short memory when it comes to things that get resolved. And I mean, if there's no jail time, we saw the sentencing for Jalen Carter after the 2 misdemeanors. That's all it was. And if that is the extent of the legality issues coming out of it, then I mean, again, we're still a month away from the draft at this point. And again, that time proves to be a buffer. And I don't know, especially when you do turn on the film, because I've watched Jalen Carter. I watched him last season, live in real time. And then I've gone back and watched him. The way that he can use his hands, flip his hips, knows his leverage points, on top of being a guy that is so massive and strong that he can just straight bull rush you if he wants to. That blend, I mean, it's unprecedented. The kind of talent and the technique that he has, and just the overall build and the intangibles that you can't teach because it's just genetics at this point.
Right.
I mean, he is that dude. And I've heard that from multiple coaches. I've asked multiple coaches, multiple scouts about him. Tell me, is this guy the real deal? Is he worth it? Is he? And every single one of them says that he is. And again, it's because of this crazy blend of talent and brute strength and genetics that he has that just you don't see a package like that. You don't see a package like him anywhere. He doesn't I've asked coaches for comps that are already in the league, and they're like, and there is none. I can't think of one because he's that special. So when a guy is that special, things are forgiven. And again, like you said, the Bears are going to do their due diligence and make sure that was an isolated incident and there is nothing else. There's no character flaws and all that other stuff. But as they're doing their due diligence, so is everybody else. And
so is everybody else.
If it turns out that was an isolated incident and it doesn't really speak to his character, because I don't know him either, then he's not going to last till 9. Just point blank period. Which is why I'm like, Kalijah Kancey. That sounds good. Maybe they trade down again and they get
I mean,
the first round. I'm trying to temper my expectations here for the Chicago Bears because I don't even know if they're going to have a shot at Jalen.
Well, we talked about it last week where Seattle and Detroit make way too much sense, especially with teams that have these lottery picks of selections that weren't even theirs. The 2 teams that they traded with just happened to be brutal this past season, and they went out there. Now they have this luxury pick, and why not use that for a player like Jalen Carter, because it makes a lot of sense. But we're also ignoring the fact that Arizona's probably not drafting a quarterback either. And if they don't trade back, and if there's no big rush to get up to number 3, they could easily just be like, yeah, we'll take him. We need help on the defense. I don't know. I don't know the Cardinals well enough to know if that fits schematically or anything like that, but it feels like, you don't pass on a player like that. You figure out a way to make him valuable into your situation. But it's always fun to talk about. I will say this. God damn it. I said I wasn't going to say that anymore. But here's my thing. Ryan Poles started talking about getting in kids who are local talents. And I meant to bring this up with you earlier.
Oh, yeah.
Local talents. He's like, oh, I kind of like that. And there's a guy, we have Van Ness from Iowa. We got your boy Skoronsky at Northwestern. I'm surprised that you didn't read that and be like, Skoronsky's a Bear.
Maybe because I don't necessarily read into things as much as dude, maybe to my detriment. Maybe to my detriment. I fully admit that might be a character flaw of mine as well.
It is.
No, it was interesting to hear him talk about that, and that it was kind of purposeful. It was very intentional. He said that he thinks it means more, and that it's not coincidence that 4 or 5 of these guys are now from the Chicagoland area. Yeah. And because, again, especially, and Bears fans aren't going to like this, especially for a franchise that hasn't enjoyed recent success.
How dare you?
I'm sorry. This is a fact. You kind of, like, for someone that's outside the Chicago area, they have absolutely no idea what this team means to the city because, and the surrounding area, because how would they? A lot of people from on like an outside perspective measure what a team means to the city based on their success. That's not the case here in Chicago, because I fully believe, and this is probably my bias growing up here, but they are whatever the opposite of a fair weather fan is. I mean, they're all diehards. Like, everybody's a diehard, because in my lifetime, the Bears have not won a championship. No. So, but I still rode for them like you wouldn't believe growing up. And it takes someone that grew up here to fully understand that. And so to carry on a tradition and to believe that you can be great and believe that the city, you can put the city on your back, essentially, you had to have been here. And that's what these guys have. And I thought that was really cool that Ryan Poles was so candid about that, saying, yeah, no, I do think it means more to these guys. And I want to have as many Chicago area guys on my roster, because they can then, that turns into leadership, that turns into motivation, that turns into just basic knowledge of what this team means to the city, because it's so much. It means so much to the city.
You have more knowledge of that area of Chicago, because I was out of there by the time I was in first grade. I was alive for the Bears' lone Super Bowl victory, but too young to care. My dad was happy. That was fun. I enjoyed that for him. You know what? But here's my thing. And this is from listening to my dad, is he's would often say, like, Jordan's Bulls, amazing in the 90s. Mm-hmm. The Cubs, White Sox both won World Series within the last 20 years. The Blackhawks won 3 Stanley Cups in 5 years. I believe it's
6 years. Yeah.
6 years.
6.
Nothing would compare, though, to the Bears winning a Super Bowl. Is that an accurate statement?
That's the sentiment that I heard. Because like I said, I wasn't around the last time. And the thing is, though, I mean, I have been on the sidelines of Michigan Avenue when the Blackhawks won the Cup in 2010. I was hanging out my friend's window on Addison Street when the Cubs won the World Series in 2016. Like, I've seen the city go absolutely bananas for these teams. Mm-hmm. And everybody that I know that was around for the 85 Bears is like, that is nothing compared to what the city will do if and when the Chicago Bears finally win another Super Bowl. They will go nuts. This city will shut down for multiple days. I mean, I remember there was 2 million people on Michigan Avenue for the Blackhawks winning the Stanley Cup in 2010. Yeah. That's how serious the city takes sports when it's the NHL. I grew up a huge hockey fan. Every guy I grew up with played hockey, and football was still king for me, but hockey was right there. But that's not a normal thing for the rest of the country. Like, no one else cares about the NHL, but we do. Yeah. And if we're going to get that excited over a hockey team, I just can't even imagine what it would be like for the Bears to win. Yeah, it'll be an amazing feat. And hopefully Ryan Poles is the one that can make it happen.
Yeah, I can't wait to find out what those parades are going to be like. Of course, I've already got my tickets ready. I will be there for that, no doubt about it. Living out here in Southern California, it was interesting because the Lakers traditionally just had it seemed like they had a parade every year. And those were huge. Those were well attended. The Kings parades, both of them, were both better than the Rams parade. The Rams parade was kind of sad. But the Kings, you talk about the NHL not doing well. The Kings obviously not even close to the Lakers, but did pretty nice. Like had a pretty nice little parade, for the NHL. The Rams, not so much. The Rams are like, try to find the 13 people here and put them into one spot and see how that goes. But it'll be interesting to see. But again, I can't really speak to that because I did not grow up my full life in Chicago. So I really can't attest, but I'm going based on people who have known, who saw Bobby Douglas play football. So they would know better than me. In any event, I know we've had one question. Let's go to another question. I'm sorry. Yeah. I feel like I've been ignoring him. And he's following the CTOD.
Hi again.
Listen, I appreciate the heck out of you guys taking time to answer my question. Just miss Carmi getting into the studio like she did in season. Cheers. Thank you for that sentiment. Yeah, you know what? Like sweet. It's, but you also need a break. You don't need to be at everybody's beck and call all the time.
I guess people probably don't know what my life is like in the off season, but I go out to LA a lot more. I live kind of not bi-coastally because Chicago isn't necessarily a coast, but it's a third coast. But I am in and out of Chicago quite a bit in the off season. So that has precluded me from being able to go into the studio regularly at CHGO. But I love those guys over there. I have been on with them at every major off-season event that they've been at. So I was on with them at the Combine. I was on with them at the Super Bowl. And yeah, they know that they have my number. So anytime that I can come in, I will continue to do that sparingly in the off-season. But yeah, I appreciate it. That was so sweet.
That was really nice. I hope they also realize that when they signed me up to come in, that I got to come in on Zoom like this. But I can't. I'm in Southern California. I just can't hop a plane. We were going to do something last year where I was going to go into the CHGO headquarters, and I forget what. Oh, you know what? The NFL sent me to Good Morning Football. So the week that I did Good Morning Football in New York last year was the week that I was supposed to be at CHGO. But interestingly enough, I'm also going to be talking about being on Good Morning Football in New York again this coming summer. At that point, too, I'm going to try to work it out to see if I can, on my way either there or back, make a stop out in Chicago and say hello to everybody. Maybe do a couple of shows. We'll see how it goes.
Couple of games, couple of baseball games.
That's always the thing, too, is I always want to crack open the schedule. I always go armed. I always favor the Mets because I would rather go to a Mets game than a Yankees game. So that's always, and I have easier hookups with the Mets, although they'll probably be better this year. We'll see. But how about another question, though, Sammy? What are your thoughts on the synergy between Poles and Flues? They've been joined at the hip in every picture since before the Combine. Yeah, they look like a fun little couple. Like they're photobomb. It's like seeing Clooney and Brad Pitt just hanging out all the time. Like I like seeing that. You know what? Let me ask you this, Carmen, because whenever they start talking about the quarterbacks in San Francisco, it feels like Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch have very different answers. They don't feel like they're on the same page. They do not seem to be in concert of who should be the starting quarterback. I know they kind of walked around it today, but I don't think that they're on the same page as much as like our guys, Flus and Ryan Poles.
Let me read between the lines a little bit here for you guys.
Finally,
I've been saying this. No, I've been saying this from the beginning last year when Ryan Poles, with his first two picks of the draft, what did he do? He took defensive backs. Did the Bears, was that like number one on the Bears list and what everybody thought he should do? And was that maybe the biggest need that the Bears had? No, it wasn't. But Matt Eberflus is a defensive coach. Matt Eberflus has coached linebackers and the secondary in his career. That from the jump was like, okay, these guys are on the same page. Ryan Poles knows exactly what Matt Eberflus wants. He knows Matt Eberflus' system. These two are clearly in lockstep and they are communicating very well with each other. Fast forward to this year. What does Ryan Poles do in free agency? He gets two linebackers. Was that the Bears' biggest need? Probably not. But guess what? The value was there and he knows that those are guys that Matt Eberflus needs for his defense. And so while he is trying to create this talent bubble around Justin Fields to get a good evaluation of him, he also is making sure that to to show Matt Eberflus that he hears him and he knows what he needs to on his side of the ball. Because so often, I mean, there's a lot to a coach being a defensive coach or an offensive coach, at least from my experience and what I've seen in the front offices that I've been a part of and the coaching staffs that I've seen, is that if your coach is a defensive coach, your offense is operating and humming under your offensive coordinator more than anything else, with oversight from the head coach. But if you're a good head coach, you defer because that's not your area of expertise, right? So Ryan Poles is playing both sides here, but you can tell that he is very in tune to the needs of what Matt Eberflus wants. And that is not the case everywhere. The way that these two staffs work in conjunction with each other that I've seen is great. And you cannot take that for granted. You cannot take for granted the relationship they have. I think it's easy to, because they're both timers at their positions. Matt Eberflus, first-time head coach, Ryan Poles, first-time GM, and they're learning together, but the key word there is together. They're doing it together. And I really like it, and they seem to genuinely enjoy each other, which is really sweet, and I really like it.
No, I love it too. And you know what? I know that the offensive defensive thing is always an issue. I saw somebody on Twitter today, and I didn't engage, talking about like, I wish the Bears didn't have a defensive minded coach. And I'm like, I know, because it nearly ruined Tom Brady's career. It happens, but there is something to be said that the defense is better. You know, it's only going to help out Justin Fields. Like it all comes together. And sometimes when you have a offensive minded coach, look at Nathaniel Hackett. That didn't help out Russell Wilson, Adam Gase. Right. Like you can go through a laundry list of offensive and defensive coaches that didn't work out. How about just having a good football coach? And what it really comes down to is Getsy our guy? It feels like he is. And it feels like, you know, he's in this mix too of like learning on the job. But I remember that clip from the Senior Bowl where Flus shows up and Getsy was so happy to see him, like, hey, his buddies showed up, you know, to say, how you doing? You know, you're getting this cool opportunity at the Senior Bowl. And for his boss and his, you know, his coach to show up, I thought that meant a lot. So I think that the chemistry with this team is off the charts, and I love seeing it. And I think it's going to start showing itself on the field, especially when you think about all those one score losses the team had. I think that's where some things were like this kind of situation, a good locker room, a good situation, a good foundation, a good environment is going to lend itself to more victories in the near future. Even though Ryan Poles said they're a long way away, now, but you know,
listen, under promise, over deliver. That's all I have to say. Ryan Poles is very good at that. No, yeah. And you touched on it, but that's the other thing too, that a good defense is going to also help Justin Fields. Yeah. It's going to keep the other offense from scoring and keep them off the field and get the ball back to Justin Fields so he can do something with it. So it seems like, yeah, they are in lockstep with each other. The coaches that I know on the staff they love coaching for Matt Eberflus. And they said, not only do the players love, you know, he's a player's coach, the players love playing for him, but we love coaching for him. And that's great. Honestly, the chemistry there seems to be there. And that is going to manifest itself on the field one of these days.
It's interesting too, because it feels like a lot of people forgot how enjoyable the Bears were last season. Like they were a lot of fun. Their games were an absolute blast. You forgot, like, oh yeah, we're terrible. We're not winning games, but like every game was entertaining. Every game seemingly came down to the final possession. And Matt Harmon talked about this too. You know, when you look back at that Commanders game, and this is no knock against Darnell Mooney, but think about how that Commanders game ended. And they get down to the goal line and they throw a 50-50 ball for Darnell Mooney. He doesn't make the catch. The Bears lose. Imagine that situation being DJ Moore this year. That's going to be a win. A lot of these situations are going to turn around because of guys like DJ Moore being in the mix. So I'm very excited for it. And I've also noted too, there's a lot of copium going on with the Green Bay Packers. Oh, our friend Aaron Nagler for years has been preaching. Nags has been preaching for years, and he still believes this. I think Mina Kimes also chimes in on this a lot. Wins are not a quarterback stat. They just
absolutely
aren't.
Not.
I disagree. But you know what? You guys have set the parameters, so you cannot throw it in Justin Fields' face that he's won 5 games. Like, no, you guys have determined that it's not. I feel like it is. It's like pitching, like starting pitching in baseball. like that. Like, why are wins a pitcher stat? It shouldn't be, especially now. Only one pitcher in all of Major League Baseball even swings a bat.
Wait, so you don't think that you don't think that wins should be a pitching stat, but you think they should be a quarterback stat?
No, it's got to be one or the other. If they're a pitching stat, then they're a quarterback stat.
No, I think they should be a pitching stat because you could conceivably pitch an entire game. And and it's not as much of a team sport. Baseball's not as much of a team sport.
What if your ERA was 1.9 and you were 10 and 11 and some curtain jerker with a 5.4 ERA was 12 and 4? Like, who's the better pitcher? Like, who's doing better? Like, there's way too many other statistics, especially in baseball.
It's definitely not. It can't be a stat for the quarterbacks. It just can't. Mina and I have bonded over that because of the fact it's a team game. It is a team game.
All right, fair enough. That's fine. Then don't throw it in Justin Fields' face.
They're not a quarterback. I don't. And I don't think I do either. Mina doesn't either.
It's all these Packer fans. And there's one guy, and we're like, yeah, you're mad. They're like, I'm not mad. I'm like, okay, put it in the paper.
Listen, that I was not go mad. Go easy on Packers fans right now. They're dealing with a lot. I'm barely holding it together at this point, having to cover this whole saga. So just go easy on them right now.
All right, we'll give them a little bit of a leeway. How about another question though, Sammy? Do we have one? Adam, would you be okay with trading our first, not Carolina's next year, for Jeffrey Simmons and taking Paris Johnson at number 9, solidifying our 2 needs? Simmons is only 25. I think that I don't, without even thinking of what the asking, I think when you get into a situation where a player like Jeffrey Simmons is available, like, the price is actually less than you think because they're trying to get rid of a contract. I'm not sure that you'd have to give up that much. I would allow Ryan Poles to do his evaluation on what that would need. But at the same time, when you're looking at how you're building this team, guys like Jeffrey Simmons, again, would come in, immediately fill a huge need for this squad. But with the amount of money that you're going to have to pay, wouldn't you rather take a guy in the draft that you can develop because it'll be cheaper? And guys like Simmons feel like a 2024 priority. They don't feel like a this year priority. But I'd be willing, I'd be willing to hear the other side of that. How about you, Carmen?
No, I agree. I don't think that, again, we talked about you're not going to be able to fill every hole this year, and that's fine. You're probably not really a contender this year. Sorry. So next year, though, I think a move like that makes a lot of sense where you are truly 1 to 2 players away, or you're 1 to 2 you have got 1 to 2 more holes to fill, and you want to bring in a guy like that, especially, a guy that is going to be on a hefty contract, because now you have the luxury of developing players, getting them on the cheap, not having to pay a ton of money for salaries, essentially. And then once you get into, and it's going to give you cap space next year as well. And so then next year, when you're just putting the finishing touches on things, then you can afford to take a player that is maybe a little bit more expensive, but is going to be an immediate impact guy and is going to be worth the contract that you're paying him or the money that you're paying him. At this point, Jeffrey Simmons is not going to be the difference between a playoff run and not for the Bears. So if that's not the case, then I wouldn't pay someone that much money yet.
Yeah.
Next year, come talk to me.
Yeah, you would have to extend him. And I think that's one of the biggest reasons. That's why when you look at a lot of these moves, when they didn't take Orlando Brown Jr., a lot of these potential free agents that, didn't get picked up by the Bears, it's because of where the Bears are in this rebuild. And we've seen Ryan Poles really value these draft picks, which again leads me to believe that we're going to move down from number 9. I want to just prepare everybody for that. Want to prepare everybody for taking more defensive players as well. Like when our first pick's a cornerback or something like that. There's a lot of things going on.
Good
There's a lot
class.
of,
it's a really good corner class.
It really is. You got the number 9 pick. You essentially have 3 second rounders. And I say essentially because, if losing out on that Chase Claypool pick is essentially a second round pick, then our 3rd round pick is essentially a second round pick. I mean, again, just using your own vernacular in a variety of different ways, but in any event, there we are. But I want to thank everybody for joining us here this evening. Carmen, what do you got going on? I know you said you had an article coming out for foxsports.com. What else is in the pipeline for you?
Well, this morning I just published the Aaron Rodgers trade saga, the books of the Gospel According to Rodgers and Gutekunst, because Goody came out yesterday and at league meetings and told his side of the story about what has happened thus far. So I basically compared. I did a lot of work for you guys, for Packer fans especially, but anybody that cares about the situation, where I went through the dates that Rodgers had mentioned in his McAfee appearance, matched them and cross-referenced them with what Goody had said, and tried to arrive at some conclusion as to what actually happened. I'm still confused, but this was the two sides, and it was comparing and contrasting what the two sides had said, and it took me a long time. So,
were you like Terry? Are you like Terry from Homeland, and you got the board with the string?
Yeah. Or what's his face from Always Sunny?
Yes.
And I'm just like, God, like it was really Brett Coleman. I don't know if you know him on Twitter. I posted the story and he just goes, "How have you stayed so sane covering this?" And I replied to him and I was like, "Sane?" ? And then I put a GIF from Schitt's Creek that said, "Who says?" I was like, who says I'm sane? Because I'm not. I'm going nuts. But I don't think we're gonna have a resolution anytime soon either. Spoiler alert. So. Yeah, but it seems like we have other paid comments or something.
We do,
yeah. So let's
bring us up. Bring them aboard. Ron Winarski. Who should the Bears draft in the first round? Offensive line, defensive tackle, or an edge rusher? Adam, I'm going to say wide receiver Jackson Smith-Njigba is going to be my choice. We broke this down. Finally, I got somebody on board with me. This is why I brought Manda Harbin on last week. But we talked about it. Well, you know what's funny? I know we talked about this a lot, but we actually, because he hadn't been thinking about that because Matt's not in the weeds with the Bears like I am. But it does make a lot of sense because when you think of the fact that when Justin Fields over the next couple of years is going to eventually have to be extended, if one of your wide receivers is still on his rookie contract, especially a 5-year rookie contract, it would make a lot of sense to go into that direction, especially when you consider those 2 second round picks, a top of the third round pick, I should say, 5 picks in the top 103. We're going to find guys to play offensive and defensive line. So that's why over the last couple of days and last couple of weeks, I've really started to take a shine of, you know what, let's do it. Let's build this wide receiver room out. Let's go nuts and let's see what happens. What do you think, Carmen? You don't have to say on that.
No, I like that move too. I've talked about that quite a bit where I wouldn't be mad at that because that's someone also that Justin Fields is very familiar with and being his former teammate. And so if you're trying to get a really good evaluation of Justin, then you want weapons that can be utilized right away. What better receiver can you get in the first round that already has a rapport with Justin, that doesn't have to go through those growing pains with him to know his timing and to know where he wants guys and like how he operates and how he throws and what his ball feels like and all that. What his throws feel like. I have to catch myself. Things that don't sound right. But no, I mean, but different quarterbacks throw the ball in different ways. And Jackson Smith-Njigba already knows how Justin Fields throws the ball. So that is my point. He would be immediately effective for Justin Fields. He wouldn't go through a lot of the growing pains that a normal receiver would, first round or otherwise. I would love that. Again, just because you really need to know if Justin Fields is your guy going forward. And again, we talked about how you can hit later on with offensive linemen, defensive linemen, yes and no. But I do think that there are some value guys that you can get right now and maybe wait for next year when you either get another free agent, if there's a better class coming in, or, in the draft next year. But I wouldn't hate Jackson Smith-Njigba. I like him. I think he's a great player, and he's already familiar with Justin Fields. So.
And it also makes sense, too. If it was Paris Johnson Jr., I would obviously not have any problems with that. Again, leaving that evaluation up to Ryan Poles, I will trust him to do what's best. But I've said this over the last couple of weeks as well, is that I don't think we're going. I think that if our top pick and that the top option is an offensive tackle at that spot, that we're moving out of it. That's just my conjecture. I don't really have any.
I'm
not in the room, but that's just trying to understand and trying to figure out what Poles is going to do. And he's been pretty forthcoming. It's not like he's been this unsolvable riddle, because he'll be like, we might go defense with our first 2 picks. Everybody's like, no, you're not. And like, oh, actually, that's what he did.
Actually.
So,
we might trade the first round pick before free agency. Oh, well, look what you did.
Pretty much what he did. Yeah. He's the poker player. He's like, I got pocket kings. I'm like, stop doing that. Because one time you're not going to be truthful and it's going to burn me. But in any event, we got one more question though, right, Sammy? Oh my God, dude. Our own personal sponsor. No, listen, you can do as many of these as you want. Last one, I promise. Don't promise that. I know a guy and gal lead extremely busy lives, and I know where you guys can pop by. You do. I'm just excited because the Bears are the precipice of something special. CTOD, Ghost, thank you so much for that sentiment, for putting that out there. No, listen, we appreciate everybody who's been stopping by over the last couple of weeks. Listen, we're not dumb. We can see the numbers. We see that there's a lot more people stopping by, a lot more people engaging with the Chicago Bears. And not only here on this side, but we understand it for everybody. Everybody's doing well because there's a lot of cool things going on with the Chicago Bears. And it's a sense of that's just not the moves that they're making are not baffling. Like there's nothing that you're like, oh my God, I can't believe we're doing this, or we're upset about this. It's like all of it's like, okay, even if we haven't seen the full puzzle laid out before us, we still get a sense that these are positive moves that are happening, and we should be excited about it. There's no reason to be morose over anything. And whether you thought that, we fell down too far to go from 1 to 9, I think that you can still look at DJ Moore and be like, yeah, but that's still a pretty good wide receiver. And I think that, we tried to reach out to people from outside of our Bears bubble. We had, again, going back to with Matt Harmon a couple of days ago, that's somebody who has no ties to the Bears, who was very effusive in praise of what was going on with this organization. And I think we should take heart in situations like that too. And I will tell you, when I'm walking around the halls of the NFL Network, and people will come up and they'll want to talk Bears with me. And we're talking about national reporters, guys like Steve Weich and Daniel Jeremiah and people like that, Scott Pioli. They're all very positive about what is going on with the Chicago Bears and are happy to talk about it. They're delighted with what's going on. They're excited for us. They know that we have great fans. And so it's a good time to be a Bears fan. And I agree with you that we should all rejoice.
Wow. Precipice, morose, effusive. Yeah. Everybody's getting a vocabulary lesson on top of it. So tune in, guys. We really appreciate it, though. I really appreciate everybody tuning into this program in particular. And that's great. It's grown a lot over the season. So awesome. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, it's great. Well, we're going to let you go, Carmen. Thank you so much for being here tonight. As always, Tuesday nights are always a blast with you. Make sure you check her out on foxsports.com and as availability permits on CHGO, where I will be as well. But there she goes. Thanks so much, Carmen. Good to see you.
Bye, guys.
All right. There she goes. The great Carmen Vitale. Make sure you are following. We didn't throw her, her Twitter handle, like Carmi V. At Carmi V on all the other whatever social media sites, the ones that'll still be running over the next couple of weeks. Here's my thing. Possibly tomorrow, CHGO. I will be on NFL Total Access on Thursday and Friday. My mock draft with a twist is coming out next week. I will be making appearances on Good Morning Football in the very near future. And of course, we are working on a very special guest for the show. So look for another special edition of the Sick Podcast, possibly coming out at the end of this week. So until that time, bear down, and Sammy, go ahead and play us out.
And that's a wrap. Hope you don't miss us too much until next time. Follow the Sick Podcast with Adam Rank on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, Google Play, and Apple Podcasts. Brought to you by Underdog Fantasy.